On the morning of February 9th, 1855, a woman in the Devon village of Topsham opened her front door and looked down. The snow was fresh and undisturbed, except for a single line of small hoof-like prints. They ran straight up her garden path, directly over the wall at the far end, and continued on the other side without a break. She looked left along the lane. The same prints ran as far as she could see. She looked right. Same thing. Whatever had made them was already gone. You're listening to The Unlit Room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. This episode's narration is AI-generated. The research, writing, and editorial decisions behind every story are made with care for accuracy and respect for those involved. Today, one freezing February night in 1855, and the footprints that walked across South Devon, over walls, over rooftops, and maybe over a river, without anyone ever seeing what made them. South Devon, England. February 1855, a hard winter. Towns strung along the coast and the estuary, Topsham, Dawlish, Exmouth, Teignmouth, separated by miles of fields, hedgerows, and stone walls. On this particular morning, all of them found the same thing. A trail of prints in the snow. Small marks, roughly 4 inches long, shaped like a cloven hoof. U-shaped at the edges, crisp-edged, and evenly spaced in the fresh white surface. The first unusual thing was how they ran. Not left-right like a 4-legged animal, not the alternating diagonal pattern of a dog or a fox. A single line, one print directly in front of the other, as if something had been walking upright. Evenly, without rushing. In one garden, that might have been explainable. A stray animal, a distorted mark from something ordinary. But the prints weren't in one garden. They crossed the garden, entered the lane, crossed the lane, entered the next garden. They went through fields. They crossed open ground without wandering. And then residents from the next parish began comparing notes. They had the same prints, then the next parish, and the next. Topsham had them, Dawlish had them, Exmouth had them, Teignmouth had them. A stretch of South Devon coast, 20 miles or more, and the same line of marks running through all of it, as if something had walked through every parish in a single night without stopping to rest. The contemporary accounts noted this with a specific kind of unease. It wasn't just the shape of the prints, it was the coverage, the relentlessness. One line, through everything. Devon in 1855 was the kind of county where people knew each other's animals. Every dog in a village was a known dog. Every farm had an accounting of its livestock. The idea that something had moved through while the whole county slept, leaving tracks in every parish, touching nothing, was not a comfortable idea. Because it didn't just cross fields. The trail reached a high stone wall, the kind built across Devon to separate properties, shoulder height, solid, made to keep things in or out. On one side, a line of prints arriving at the base. On the other side, the same line of prints continuing forward. Same spacing, same direction, unbroken. No marks on top of the wall, no scramble, no disturbance at all. Reports in the Illustrated London News described the trail crossing rooftops. The same prints going up a slope of slate, then resuming on the other side. Tracks threading through a narrow passage between haystacks. A space too tight for most animals to navigate without disturbing the straw. The quality that unsettled people most wasn't any single print. It was the consistency. The trail didn't stop to investigate anything. It didn't double back. It moved with a single forward purpose that felt nothing like an animal searching for food or shelter. Witnesses who followed it, sometimes for what they described as miles, reported that the trail didn't waver. It went where it was going, and then it reached the bank of the river EKS. The prints arrived at the edge of the water, the estuary, cold, dark, wide, and according to some of the accounts, the prints picked up again on the far bank. Same spacing, same line, as if whatever made them hadn't noticed the river at all. By evening on February 9th, men were going out with lanterns to follow the trail. Groups of them moving through the fields after dark. Contemporary accounts mentioned that they brought dogs. The dogs, some witnesses said, would not follow the prints. No animal was found. No burrow, no den, no feathers, no fur, no sign that anything had rested or eaten or sheltered anywhere along the trail. Just the prints, running forward, and the absence of everything else. 7 days later, on February 16th, the Times of London ran a report. The story went national within days. Letters flooded the Illustrated London News. Clergy, farmers, naturalists, skeptics, all of them trying to account for what had been described. The shape of the prints put a specific word in people's mouths: hoof-like, cloven-shaped. In 1855, England, in a county of working farms and old country parishes, those words carried a particular weight. People were genuinely asking, in the days after this happened, whether something had walked through their fields that wasn't an animal. The name that attached itself to the prints wasn't given by later storytellers. It was given by the people who followed them in the snow. They called them the Devil's Footprints. The Reverend G.M. Musgrave, a local clergyman, was among those who tried to find a rational account. He wasn't a credulous man, but every explanation he attempted broke apart when he applied it to the full run of the trail. That stubborn resistance to tidy answers was, he noted, exactly what made the thing stay with people. By morning, half of England had a theory. Not one of them explained everything. Richard Owen, the eminent comparative anatomist, one of the most respected naturalists of the century, reportedly suggested badgers. It's not as absurd as it sounds. A badger's prints, seen by lantern light in partially thawed snow, can distort into unusual shapes. Melting and refreezing expand and warp whatever's underneath. A badger moves purposefully and leaves a relatively regular track. But a badger doesn't clear a shoulder-high stone wall and continue on the other side unchanged. And one badger, or even several, couldn't account for the same prints turning up across 24 parishes over a single night. The period press speculated about an escaped animal, possibly a kangaroo from a private menagerie somewhere in the county. A kangaroo does hop in a single line. Its print, compressed and refrozen, could read as hoof-shaped. There were rumors of a menagerie in the area, but no escape was ever confirmed, and nothing that hops goes over rooftops without leaving a mark of the landing. Later analysts pointed to weather effects: eaves dripping in the freeze, water falling at a regular pace and freezing into evenly spaced marks, wind scattering seeds or debris in a straight line across the snow, partial thaw-refreeze cycles altering prints left by something ordinary into something that looks strange by morning. These explanations account for some of what was reported. They don't account for all of it. The prints ascending walls and resuming on the far side are harder to explain by dripping eaves. Every explanation proposed, and there were many, failed to account for every feature of the trail as described. The mystery survived intact. And the reason every explanation failed, that's the part worth sitting with, because the reason isn't what you'd expect. The original accounts don't agree with each other. The reports from different parishes describe different prints. Some witnesses described clearly cloven hoof shapes, others described something more like a round pad. The spacing between prints varies from account to account. The dramatic claims, the rooftops, the crossing of the river EKS, appear in some letters and reports, but not others. The total trail length that folklore eventually fixed upon, often given as dozens of miles, may not represent a single unbroken track at all. It may be that several separate sets of prints in several separate parishes, made by different causes on the same snowy night, were stitched together by a frightened public comparing notes and a national press that knew a good story. Mike Dash, writing for the Fortean Studies Journal in 1994, analyzed the contemporary sources in detail. His conclusion was that the evidence is genuinely ambiguous. Some prints were probably made by ordinary animals. Some accounts were probably embellished in the retelling. Some of the dramatic details, the wall crossings, the river, were likely added as the story gathered speed. But after accounting for all of that, something in the record still doesn't resolve cleanly. The volume of independent contemporary reports from separate parishes on the same morning describing the same basic phenomenon resists a single easy dismissal. The deeper mystery Dash identified may not be what walked through Devon. It may be how a collection of odd marks scattered across a snowy county, made by different things in different places, became a single trail, a single night, a single name. That's how folklore is built, not from nothing, from something real, too strange to set down simply. There are no victims in this story, no harm was done. Whatever left those prints, if it was an ordinary animal whose tracks the frost had distorted, or several different animals in several different places, or weather and chance and excited people comparing notes, it frightened some villagers and then the snow melted. What the devil's footprints left behind is something else, a window into how evidence becomes legend. By the time the Times ran its report on February 16, 1855, 7 days after the snow was gone, the story had already grown past anyone's ability to check it. We're reading that morning through other people's fear. The prints they left in the record aren't prints in the snow. They're the impression that fear makes, pressed into newsprint in 1855, never quite faded. 170 years on, no one knows what walked through Devon that night. The honest answer, the one the sources actually support, is that more than one thing probably did. That none of them were supernatural, and that the story we inherited is the ghost of all of them at once. If this one kept you up tonight, good. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.